Welcome back. Today we're going to continue on setting our weapon up inside of our Unreal Engine game project. And this is probably going to be 2, maybe 3 videos in length because of the amount of blueprinting that we're going to have to do to get it so that our weapon will work. If you want to get caught up in the videos, go ahead and please take a look at my YouTube channel. There you can see all the videos that have led us up to this point today and get caught up. Alright, so let's go ahead and get back into getting our blueprints set up for our game. It's going to look something like this. Go ahead and get this all set up. So this is kind of the prototype I was working with. Not 100% done yet. We got a lot of things to finish up, but kind of following along in our project off of what I've been working on with this one. So if I hit the play button, you'll see that the character, you see the splash, see the muzzle flash, and then the splash of the rounds hitting the ground. And that's what we're going to work on now and make it so that the gun is functional and measures where we're hitting. Okay, so that's what we're going to try to achieve. Go ahead and pull that out of the way and go ahead and get started with our current project. Everything all set up here. All right, so this is where we're at now with our current character, and the first thing we want to do is we're going to go ahead and start getting things set up for our blueprint and kind of think through the process of what this is going to look like. So let's go ahead and find our character blueprint that we set up. And we're going to start right up here at the event graph. So this is where we've got everything set up so far for our movement. Okay, but we're also going to get started down here. I'm going to push this out of the way a little bit. And we're going to need to start putting in our blueprinting for our weapons fire. The first thing we're going to do is we need to pull in our input, right? So I'm going to go ahead and right click, and I'm going to look for my fire weapon. So remember, way back at the very beginning, we set all of our inputs up, and the input that we set up to be able to fire our weapon is the left mouse button and also the gamepad. So if we remember that back here in our edit under our project settings, and then if we go to input down here, we set up all of these, and right here is fire weapon, our left mouse button, and our gamepad right trigger button. So this little control that we just opened up right here, and I don't want to close everything, wrong button, I just want to close out the project settings, there we go. And this is that input that we created, and we have a press and a release. So press means we're going to fire the weapon, right? And then we release, we're going to stop firing. So that means we have to have things happen for both of these different inputs, both the pressing and the releasing of our weapon. And the first thing we need to do is set up some functions for this, okay? And so we'll probably, let's go ahead and go with the start. We'll go ahead and do our firing right here. So we're going to call it just that. We're going to create a function, and this function is right here. So we come over here, we're going to push the little plus button, and we're going to name this function. I don't know why it just did all that. All right, so we're going to name this function. Let me just back out of this one for a second here. Something's strange. Why did it? Oh, okay, there it is right there. I don't know why I flipped over my blueprint, but anyway, that's all right. So we're going to go ahead and name this function, and I'm going to click on it, rename it, and you can also hit the F2. This is going to be our start firing weapon, and we'll just name it something like that exact thing, since this is what we're going to want to do. When we press the button down, we're going to start firing our weapon. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, now once we start firing our weapon, so we hold that button down, we probably want to make sure that the player is still alive, because we don't want to have our weapon just start firing if our player isn't alive. And we've already created a function for that called isAlive. If you remember, this isAlive function consists of our variable dead, in this case with it being a boolean, so it's not dead. And so if our character is not dead, then our character is alive. So we're going to go ahead and go back into our start firing. But in order to connect that up, we're going to need a branch. So we can pull this out, type in branch. This is going to pull it up, and then it's going to want us to check for the condition, and in this case we're going to want to pull out this function, the isAlive function, and we're going to check to make sure that our character is alive. Alright, so then the next thing we want to do is we're going to pull up, if it is true that our character is alive, we want to activate. Okay, and what do we want to activate? Well, we want to activate the muzzle for our character. In this case, this P. bellica muzzle. We want to go ahead and start to activate that muzzle flash. So that's the first thing we're going to do, is when we pull this out, pull this back down here, clean it up a little bit. So when we activate, we push the button, we want to start having our muzzle flash. So we're going to start to get that flash happening right at the very beginning as we start to shoot. Okay. Now, what else do we need? So we're pulling the trigger, and basically what's going to happen is for our weapon, we want our weapon to have the flash, right? So we just got that. We want to have the sound effect happen. So that sound that we worked on in the last video, we want to have that sound happen. And so we can go ahead and put that in next. But the way this is actually going to work is there's not actually going to be a little model of a bullet come flying out of the end of our weapon. What's going to happen is we're going to have these animations that make it appear that something flew out of the end of our barrel and then impacted over here where we were aiming. In between, we're just going to use some ray casting. So we're going to cast out a ray. We're going to tell it to look down the position of the barrel and look out that direction. And for a certain distance, we can establish the distance for a range of our weapon. And if there's anything that we hit between those two distances, between that distance of the barrel and where it impacted, if we hit that, then we can add damage to it. We can count that as a hit. We can have the animation of the muzzle, not the muzzle, but the impact splash happen right there on whatever it was we shot at. So, or we hit that got in between where we were trying to aim. So those are kind of the processes that we're going to work on in this is firing part of it. So we've already got the splash happening, or the muzzle flash happening right here. The next thing we're going to do is we need sound. So that sound effect, we're going to go ahead and bring that out here. Now back here for our branch, because we're only interested if the condition is true of all this happening, we don't need to have anything for false. If it's false, if our character is dead, then nothing's going to happen. It shouldn't fire, we shouldn't get any animation, we shouldn't get any sound. So all of that shouldn't happen, but if it is true, we do want it to happen. So let's go ahead, and now we're going to pull off of here, and we want to get the spawn sound. So this is called spawn sound, and we want it to do it at a location. We want it to be at the location of where our actor is, which is also where our camera and our audio pickup is for our sound. So we're going to do spawn at location, okay? And we're going to expand this a little bit real quick here. Now, the sound that we want to select the sound that we just created yesterday, or in the video, I'm saying yesterday, but in the last video. And so I'm going to click down on that, and I want the Bellica Rifle Q, which mine happens to be right there at the front, but you're going to find whatever you called it. Remember, we named it, I named mine Bellica Rifle _Q. This is the sound that I want to have played whenever that trigger gets pulled. We should hear the sound, and we should see a muzzle flash happen. Okay, so, but we need to tell it where that location is, and in this case, we want it to be where our actor is. So the first thing we need to do is we need to tell it to go get our player. So we're going to type in get player pawn. Okay, we're going to get a player pawn, and then once we get it, we want to know where our player is. So let's go ahead and get actor, and it should come up down here as good actor location, because that's where we want it to be. And then we're going to use that as our location for where the sound is going to play, right in here. Okay. All right, so now we are going to create a new variable, and this is actually going to be a component variable because we want to set this sound to play. So we can get it, we've got it, we've told it to spawn this sound at that location, but now we need to set it to that sound. And that's what we're going to do from here. But first we need to create this variable that we want right here. So it's down here in components. You see we have the muzzle flash is actually down here. That's what this is right here. We have our camera, which is not in this particular blueprint that we're working on, and also the spring arm, but we need that additional variable, and we're going to go ahead and just create this variable. So right up here where it says variable, we're going to hit the plus symbol right here, and then this is not going to be a Boolean. It is going to be an object type, and we want this to be an audio. And it might be better if I just type it in, but let's see if I can scroll down through here, just kind of show you all of this different choices we have in here. And I'm beginning to think I should have typed it in. There we go. All right, and so we want an audio. Let's see here. We want the audio. There it is. Audio component. This one right here. So basically, we want this object reference. Okay. So we're going to select that. And when we do that, you see it kind of changes everything. We got all these additional choices down in here. And at this point, we're not going to change any of these. These are all going to be default. We're going to leave that alone. And now we've got to give this a name. And we're going to go ahead and name this weapon fire sound. Okay, that's going to be our variable. And go back into here. Not sure why I'm getting all these additional blueprint tabs here. I'll have to track that down later. So we're going to go ahead and pull this out here, and we want to set this weapon fire sound. Draw this out here, and then connect this to here. All right. Okay, so that's all the stuff that we can do at this point without having to dig into the next level. So basically what we've done is we've done the stuff we've had already set up. We've got the animation going to play, and we've got the sound that should play. Compile this, hit save, hit play, and nothing should be happening right now because we haven't actually exported this yet. So we're missing all this stuff, but you can see that as soon as we started to hit the play button, we've got the animation tied into there. So it's looking good so far. Let's go ahead and jump back in here. The next thing we got to do is we actually need to trace. So we've got the, like I said, we've got the initial muzzle flash. We've got the sound that should be playing now. And so next, the next thing we need to do is trace where our weapon is aimed to and what it's going to hit. Okay, and that is going to have to be a function that we create in addition. So let me go ahead and pull that up real quick. Let's go ahead and get our weapon trace happening. All right. So again, let's go ahead and let's see here. Create a new function. So we're going to come over here and we're going to just create it here. We're going to hit the plus button, use this method for creating a function, and this is getting a little out of hand here. All right, so this new function is going to be called weapon trace. Okay, we're going to call this one weapon trace since we're creating this as a function. Now you can name it whatever you want, of course, but I try to name it so that it makes sense as to what it is this particular function is supposed to do for us. And so we have our weapon trace. Again, the next thing we want to do, now it does seem like it might be a little bit redundant because we've already, in a higher function, checked to make sure that our actor is still alive. But we're going to go ahead and do that same thing again. I'm going to go ahead and type in another branch. Okay, and I'm going to pull out is alive again. Okay, and if it's true, what we want to do is we're going to go ahead and do a line trace by channel. And there it is right there, line trace by channel. Okay, and the line trace by channel allows us to track this particular ray where it's going from the start and to its end. Okay. However, we have to tell it where those are. Okay, and what we're going to need to do is again create yet another function. So you can see that we're kind of digging down layer into layer into layer, function underneath the next function. As we start to do this and we start to trace it out and start to build this out, we start to see that we need additional pieces added as we move along. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is go ahead and get our start location. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a new function. We're going to name this in over here. So we go ahead and hit the plus button again and get yet another empty blueprint. Okay, and this one is going to be called get weapon trace start location. A lot to it, but it's very clear as to what this particular function is supposed to do for us. All right. And this one is going to return something, so we want this one to actually have a return node attached to it because we need that information to feed that up into our higher, into our next higher part of the function. So this is going to be a pure and a constant because we don't want anything changing it from the outside. And let's go ahead and let's see here. We need to get a socket location. Okay, so first let's go ahead and put our return node in here since that one's easy to do. Go ahead, just type in return. We're going to add a return node. I'll plug that in here. Okay, and we need to go ahead and we should be able to right click and type in get socket, and we want socket location, and we actually want this socket location that's attached to the mesh of our character. So we take a look right up here. See, this is mesh for our character. So this is our character mesh. If we look through here, we have quite a few choices, but the one that we actually want is the location for our mesh right here. So I'm going to click that, and when I do that, you'll see that it comes here with our character mesh, the socket location, and now a return value, which we're going to go ahead and click right up into there. And we could rename the return value, but I'm going to leave it as it is. Now the thing we do need to do is we need to tell it what socket we want it to have. Now we could find this and pull it in, but it's just easier to type this in. Now remember, it has to be written exactly as it is on your character. So mine was written as SMG underscore BARREL. Okay, so if you're not sure what it is, we can always go back into our viewport here and click on our character. Right here's our skeletal mesh. Double click on it. There it is. Okay, and we can select our weapon down here. And remember, right down here, this is what mine was. It's right here, SMG BARREL. Okay, and just double check to make sure that that's where we're at. Let's see here, get weapon start location, BARREL. That's exactly correct. You can go ahead and compile it and save it. So we've got that piece of it. That's the start location. So I'm going to jump back to my weapon trace, and that's our start. So again, get weapon trace start location. I'm going to pull that out, connect it here for my start. Now we need to get the end location, so we're going to have to do a very similar process. So let's go ahead and get our weapon get weapon trace end location. So basically the impact point. The start location was the barrel. The end location is going to be however far away that we decide that we're going to set it up. Okay, and so we're going to go ahead and do that next. So let's go ahead and add another function. Okay, and this function is going to be named, you probably guessed it, get weapon trace end location. Trace end location. Okay. Now we have this new function started out. Again, we need to return something. We need to return that end location. So let's go ahead and we can just pull this out right here. Done it a couple different ways. Now this is going to be a return node. So return node. This is also going to be a pure and a const. So we want to make sure that we select pure and const over here. Okay. And now what we need to do is we need to also know where we're starting, since we need to get the end. So we're going to go ahead and get that start, and in order for us to be able to measure the end, we have to know where we begin. So we're going to pull out our get start location. Okay, and then not only do we need to know where that start location is, but we also need to know which direction that we want to shoot out of the end of the barrel. We don't want it going off at 90 degrees or 180 degrees, shooting ourselves, so bad things will happen. So let's go ahead and get the rotation. So let's go ahead and right click and get control. Okay, and we want to get our control rotation. And then from that control rotation, we need to know which way is forward. So which way is our character facing, which way is the weapon facing. So let's go ahead and get the forward vector from this. Okay, so type in get forward vector. So now we know our forward in rotation, the forward vector. And now we need to decide how far our weapon can shoot. And this is where we get to decide as the game designer what type of weapon we have, what the capability for distance is. And we're not taking into consideration things like gravity with this and wind and all that, like a more sophisticated game. We're just getting the basics going here. So we're going to create a variable. Okay, so we need another variable, and this variable, we're going to come over here to the variables. We're going to hit plus, get rid of that again, and it popped that variable in up there because the last thing we chose was the audio component, but this is going to be a float. So we're going to switch it back to float. Now it should move down here. And this variable, we can either select it here to change the name or down here. I'm going to just type it up in here. And this is going to be our weapon range. Weapon range. All right. And now we need to compile it so that we can actually add a value for it. So we're going to compile this. And this is where we get to decide, like I said, how far we want our weapon to be able to shoot. Initially, I'm going to set this up at 5,000. And hit enter. Now, this is something that we can either leave hidden like this, or we can open it up so that we can modify the range inside of our level control right in here when we have those things selected with our character. So if you wanted to open this up so that it could actually be public, you would click the little eyeball open right there, and now this will be something that when we compile, save, and get it all set up, I'll go ahead and show it to you real quick. So with that selected, if I go back into my level, and actually I have to have my player up, so we're not going to be able to see that right now. But let's see here. So anyway, we'll come back to that. All right, so let's finish this up. And I think about it, we need to actually have the player in the scene for us to be able to change it. So this is kind of a mute thing, but we'll just leave it open for now. Maybe it'll pop up when you show it. So we're going to pull that variable out, and we're going to get the weapons range. So now we've got everything in here that we need. We need to actually get all of this working. So what we want to do is we have a range of 5,000, and we know which direction we should be facing. So we need to multiply these two items together for our vector. So we're going to go ahead and if we right click and then hit the little shift 8 key, so if we get the asterisk, we'll get an integer times an integer, which that is not the right thing. Let me just go ahead and pull off of there, shift 8. So we want a vector times a float. This is the one we want right here, vector times a float. There we go. Much easier to do it that way. Now what we want to do is we're going to pull off of this one, and we want to add that together. So we're going to hit the plus key, so shift, and this is going to be a vector plus a vector, because this is a vector coming out and that's a vector. So we should be able to add these two together, and now this is going to go into our return node up here. These out just a little bit straighter. All right, and that it should be everything we need to be able to get us set up for tracing where the end of our weapon is going to hit. So I'm going to compile it and save it. I'm going to go back to my start. Nope. Weapons trace. There we go. We want to go to the back to weapons trace. Now I'm going to get this function right here, my end location. I'm going to pull that out. Plug that in up here. Okay. So now we've got that piece of it. The next thing we need to do is we need to know where it actually hit. So this out hit right here, okay? We need to go ahead and I'm going to pull out from here, see if it'll let me do it from here. We need to break this down into components of all the information about where the location, the actor that it hit, and those type of things. And so what we're going to do is we're going to pull out from here. We're going to get this node that looks like this. And hit the little down arrow key here. And you can see that it breaks out all this information that we may want to use to be able to decide and make decisions for us inside of our game, as far as assessing points and things like that. You can determine exactly where it hit on the character or the target that you're aiming at. You can get things like distance, what time, all this other great stuff off of this. So that is the initial piece of it. And we're going to need to tie this to, whoops, get back over there, hover over the right pin. There we go, the output pin. And we need to get a branch so that we can connect this together again. So we're going to do a branch. Okay. And this is going to be a blocking hit condition. So if we hit something. And the next thing we need to do is create yet another function, because now that we know where it, with the direction that it went and that it hit something, and in that spot we need to have an impact happen, right? So we need to spawn our impact hit, okay? So that is another function that we're going to create. So we're going to come back over here. I'm going to hit the little plus button, okay? And that's getting to be annoying. I don't know why it's doing it. And this is going to be called spawn impact hit. And this is very clear as to what it's supposed to do. This is going to be the point where our impact hit, and we're going to spawn that little particle that we need. All right, so inside of spawn impact hit, what do we need? Well, this is actually going to be pretty simple. What we want to do is we're going to pull out of here, and this is a particle, so we need to emit that particle. So this is a spawn emitter, emitter at location. So at that location, we want something to spawn as far as a particle. And we may need to go back in and dig in to see what it was exactly that is supposed to come out of there. And let me see here. The other thing we need off of this for the spawn impact is we need to get a location for this. So we're going to go ahead and put here another input, okay? And this input, we're going to hit the little plus button, all right? And this is going to be a vector, And this new parameter that came out of there is going to be hit location. All right, so now we've got that as well. We can plug that in right here. So now we got to figure out what our emitter is. So I'm going to hit the down arrow there. If I remember right, mine was P underscore, and then with my character's names, if I type in B, it should limit some of these down. And there's mine right there. Particle hit character. And I believe that's the one, but I got also a heavy. And then I got a hit world. All right. So I'm pretty sure it was hit character, but let's go ahead and we'll follow through this process again. If I go back to my level 1, and right here, if I click on my content all the way at the top, type in P underscore B for my character, Bellica. Just to double check, this is the one I want. It is the hit character. And if I'm not 100% sure which one it is I want, there's a hit world, there's also a hit heavy. I double click on it, it'll spawn and open, and you can see that it has this nice little smoke kind of thing, a little kind of like an explosion where something impacted it. That is definitely the one that I want. So I'm going to come back in here again, type in my P for particle underscore, and then B-E-L. So Bellica, and it's a hit character, particle system. I'm going to select that. And that is all there is to this one. I'm going to go ahead and compile it, save it. And now I'm going to go back up to my let's see, weapon trace. There it is. Okay, so now with that set up, I can go ahead and pull in my spawn impact hit. And again, if it hits something, which is true, so if blocking hit, true, I'm going to go ahead and go to my spawn impact. My hit location, notice it says hit location there, is going to be my location right here. Okay. And now, one other thing we need to do is if I hit an actor, so basically this is blocking, the condition is that it's going to cause this impact to hit, so I'm going to get my little animation particle to play at this location where it hits, but if I hit an actor, and that actor can be damaged, then I need to apply damage to that actor, right? So let's go ahead and pull out from here. We're going to type in apply damage. Okay. And look right here, we have this damage actor right there. I have that choice. So I'm going to pull off from my hit actor. Damage actor. But how much do I damage that actor? Well, I can make that decision myself. Right here with my base damage, we could just put in a magic number in here and type something in. But it would be better if we had a variable. So let's go ahead and create a variable. And why keeps popping open? It shouldn't do that. So this one's going to be named damage per shot. And this will be something that we can adjust as well. Now we could make this public, but like I said, pretty much going to have to come in here to adjust it anyway, so I'm just going to actually close my weapon range one down here. Hit enter before I lose that. Close that little eye. I'm not going to open that eye for this one. Now, in order to, this is also going to be a float. In order to decide how much damage I'm going to do per shot, I need to hit the compile button so that I can get my damage per shot variable default in here. And I'm going to type in like 25, okay, out of a, that would be require, if the character takes, it has 100 points health, it would take 4 shots to kill the character. You can obviously change this number to whatever you want it to be, but that's what I'm going to set mine at for right now. And now with that, we're going to pull this out. We're going to get that damage per shot. We're going to just plug it right in here. All right, so that should be everything we need for this piece of the weapon trace, and that's not even done yet, so we still got some more to do. Let's go ahead and jump back into our start firing, which is what caused this whole thing to begin with. All right, so now that we've got our weapon trace all set up, we can go ahead and pull this out. Okay, and once we set where the sound happens, we're going to set where the where it's going to go and where it's going to impact and play the particle. Okay, and now the other thing we need to decide is we're going to set a timer for this function. So let's go ahead and we're going to do a timer, and this timer is going to control basically how long this animation or this whole event is going to take place. Okay, and we want to make sure that it is also looping. We don't want it to do just one time. So let's go ahead and pull out from here, and we're going to set timer by function name. Okay, and that function name is going to be weapon trace. Okay, so this function right here, weapon trace, is going to be typed in right in here. So we need to make sure we type it exactly the way it is typed. So if you misspelled it or use capitals or lowercase, I'm not sure if so if we take a note, we hover over there, you can see it says set a timer to execute delegate. Setting an existing timer will reset the timer with updated parameters. This is exactly what we want. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And then how long should this timer be? Well, this timer is actually going to be set up based off of what we think our weapon firing rate should be. So in other words, if it's like an Uzi high-speed submachine gun, it's going to fire off very quickly, whereas if it's like an M250 caliber, it's going to have some very heavy thud, 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 and it's going to be a little bit slower, right? So we're going to go ahead and have to create another variable for that. Okay, so let's go ahead, because we don't want to put a magic number in here. We want to be able to change it whenever we need to, especially if we're going to apply this to different weapons and things like that. So let's go ahead and add a variable, and this variable is going to be called weapon fire rate. Okay, and then again we need to compile it so that we can actually put in our fire rate over here. And we're going to go ahead and I'm just going to throw a number in here, something like 0.0, maybe 0.07 or 9. I'm going to go with 9. All right, and we can always come back in and change this variable as we need to. So let's go ahead and compile it and save it. So now we've got everything we need for the first piece of our weapon firing. So let's go ahead and save all. Now I'm going to go back up to our event graph right here. And what we want to do is pull this function out for start firing weapon. And let's see, that should look something like this. We're going to go ahead and when it's pressed, we're going to start firing our weapon. Okay. Now the next thing we need to work on is when we stop firing our weapon. And I said I was going to make this into 2 videos, but 2 or 3. I think I'm going to press forward if that's okay with you and make this all into 1 video. I know it's going to be a bit lengthy. I apologize for that, but you don't want to have your weapon halfway done, right? So let's go ahead and get this piece of it finished up. So, and it should go a little bit faster because we've already built out quite a few of our functions here. So let's go ahead and try that out real quick. So the next function we need to have is we got our start firing weapon. We need to, when we release, we need to stop firing our weapon. So let's go ahead and there's also some other conditions for stopping firing besides releasing the button. So let's go ahead and hit the function. So in other words, if our character was killed or something like that. So let's go ahead and do a stop firing weapon. Okay, So we're going to stop firing this weapon. And again, let's go ahead and check for our condition to make sure that our character is alive or is dead. Okay, and we're going to put in a branch. And some things are running through my head right now about whether or not we really need this condition check for this for the stop firing condition. We're going to go with it right now, but if this throws in an error that I'm thinking that it might be causing, then we can always come back and take that out. All right, so the next thing we need to do is if we remember back here and start firing, we have, we did back here at the beginning, we activate. Okay, we activated this muzzle flash. So now what we want to do is we want to deactivate. If this is true, if we stop firing and our character is alive, we want to go ahead and deactivate. And what we want to deactivate is the same thing we activated, which in this case is the muzzle flash, right? So we're going to go ahead and deactivate the muzzle flash. Okay, so that'll deactivate. There's nothing else we need to do. It'll just deactivate. We don't need to tell it what to deactivate. And then, let's see here. Not sure why I put a second one of those in there. So we'll put it in for now. We may come back and take this out. No, you know what? We're not going to put that in right now. So basically what I'm trying to decide is right here I have another check for condition for alive. And since we're doing it at the very beginning, I'm not sure that I need it here. But I remember that when I first was working on that prototype, I was getting some errors, some weird errors, and I might have put that in there for that. So we might have to come back in if we end up getting this weird error at the end. But we'll see. So I'm going to go ahead and... yeah, we're going to go ahead and put it in because I remember what it is now. So you're going to wonder, why am I putting a second one of these in here, checking to see if our character is still alive? So basically, when we go to stop the sound and a few other things, if our character happens to die in between or as we're stopping to shoot and we release the button, we're going to get, it'll be checking for this condition, and then our character won't be alive anymore. It should be stopped playing. We have some other things happening, so it can throw up an error, and this seems a bit redundant, but we're going to put this in to prevent that error from popping up on us. Okay, so now the next thing we want to do is we're going to go ahead and put in a function for stop. It should just be stop. And it should be weapon fire sound. Let's see if that's in here. We may need to come at it from a different direction. Oh, stop firing weapon. Okay, so this is not the one I wanted. It should just be a regular stop. Target is the audio component. All right, where's my audio component? Stop. No. Actually, let's try that. Good. There we go. So basically pull out the weapon fire sound down here and type in pull off. We want to do a get. Then we're going to pull off from there. We want to type in stop. And we're going to get the stop target is the audio component. And then, okay. And then the next thing we want to do is go ahead and at the end of the stop here, we want to make sure that we clear out our timer, okay? So I'm going to pull off from here, and I'm going to type in clear timer by function name, right? And that function name is, again, going to be our weapon trace function, because we want to clear everything out that is happening inside of there. So we make sure we type that in correctly, spell it exactly the way it is, space, no space, however it was that you typed it. Okay, and so that'll clear that function out for us. And then the next thing we want to do is, this is where we're going to spawn that end gunshot sound. I talked about it in the yesterday video, I guess the last video, that we created the sound in. I used that same method. So what I did is I went to a couple sites. I went, again, just to refresh your memory, I went to Sound Bible, and this is where I got that machine gun sound from Blast Wave. But then I also downloaded another sound off of here, this 9mm Glock sound here. And then I also, let me make sure I have the sound on so you can hear that. All right, there we go. And I also went to freesound.org because I couldn't find quite enough gunshot sounds that I liked, single shot sounds for the end of this. So I went in here and downloaded this gunshot here and this one here, just to provide some variation in the end of this sound that we're going to end up creating. And then created a new, back here in my level, down here I created a new single shot cue. So just like before, create that single shot cue, and then those sounds that I downloaded, I used Audacity and I converted them the same way I showed you before. I did it one at a time. I just selected, even though all three are in here, you don't have to put them all in at the same time, but make sure you mute them and unmute them as you go along, and make sure that you export the one sound at a time. And I exported them as OGGs, just like we did before, and that's what you see down here. These are then, click and I dragged them and dropped them into here. Made the gunshot cue the exact same way. So these are just single gunshot cues. And it's on random with the modulator. And I set the modulator not so far apart this time because I wasn't really, because you're only going to hear one shot at the end, and every different time every time you release the button it'll be something different. So it's not, I didn't want to change the pitch that much. I just left it at the 0.95, which is the default minimum, and then change the max to the same thing. And once I did that, now I am ready to go ahead and have it play that sound here at the very end, which is, again, the same process where we brought in the sound to begin with. I'm going to go ahead and pull out from here. I'm going to type in the spawn sound. Spawn sound, I guess we need to type in sound. So spawn sound at location right here. And again, in order to get that location and the sound, so let's go ahead and get the location first. We need to get where our player is. So that's the place we want it to spawn at. And then get the player pawn, and then we need to get the actual location. So first we get our character, then we get the location. So we get actor location. And this is going to give us that vector that we want. Plug it into here. And then the sound, I'm going to click down on that, and it's going to be this single shot cue that I created. I'm going to just click and select that right there. And that should complete our stop firing. So I'm going to compile that and save it. And then I just remembered there was one other thing I believe I forgot to do, and it has to do with our weapon fire rate down here. So let me backtrack and make sure I can find where it's at. Okay, so our start firing. So in our start firing, right here, we kind of ended the function right here, and I said we needed to make sure once we do our set timer by function name, we put in our weapon trace here. I told you to put it exactly the same way. This is our timer. Well, a couple things we forgot to do. We went ahead and we created the variable, but we didn't apply it. Or I didn't apply it, and you didn't note it, so there we go. So I'm going to go ahead and get the fire rate, and this is going to be our time. So this is how how quickly this is going to occur. And then we want to set this to looping so that every time we do it, it loops back through. It doesn't just do it once. And then we're going to go ahead and compile that and save it. And again, this is under the start firing function. At the very end, where we did that set timer by function name, we need to make sure you got weapon trace in there. You put your weapon fire rate in here for your time and make sure you put it for looping. And that was that variable that we created down here. Okay, so now let's go ahead and go back to our event graph. And now we can pull in our stop firing function. And when we release, we should stop firing. I'm going to go ahead and highlight this and hit C on my keyboard. And this is going to be weapon fire. Weapon fire, we'll just call it that. And then I'm going to go ahead and give it a different color so it kind of stands out from everything else. Something like red. You can pick whatever color you want. I'm going to say OK, compile this, save it. And now I'm going to go to my level. And if we did everything right, we should have a working weapon system. So I'm going to hit play. All right, so I'm not really digging that end 3-bullet sound, that single shot sound. I'm going to have to find something that blends a little bit better with the actual weapon we're using. But as you can see, everything works the way it's supposed to. And then we got that really bad sound at the end. I'll fix that off video. Again, you're going to create your own anyway, so you can kind of play around and get the different sounds. You understand the process, what you need to do, but you can obviously blend your sounds. And I may end up using variations of those. I just may have to go into Audacity and play around with the sound a little bit, or find something else that works a little better. But that is it for this video. I was going to break this into 2 videos, but since we were able to get through it just under an hour, I know it's a little bit long, I apologize. But I wanted to make sure that we had it complete. That way you can just get your weapon system up and running, because then we can move on to some of the other things we need to do to make this game. We need to get our enemies working and get them in the scene so that we can actually have something to shoot. And move forward from there. So again, if you liked what you saw, please like this video. And if you want to find out a little bit more about what's going on and when things are coming out, please make sure you subscribe to my channel so that as I put out new videos in this series, you can come and check them out. I'll also be putting stuff out in 3D modeling for Maya. And I intend to get around to putting some stuff out for Unity as well. So again, thanks for watching. Have a great time, and I will see you next time.